Ladies and gentlemen, children of all ages, do not adjust your sets. It is the varsity athlete Jeremy Bodette coming for his first solo show, first shot of 2024, this time on Wrestling with the Business. Ladies and gentlemen, children of all ages, like I said at the beginning, do not adjust your sets. I'm coming to you solo. Let's see, last year Dan had to step up and do a solo show. Matt had to step up and do a solo show. Here we are, episode 40. It's my turn to do a solo show. The Professor Matt Lambert's feeling a little under the weather, and Dan had a last-minute emergency come up. But some really interesting things happened this week that I wanted to make sure I got to talk to you guys about. So, no deep dives this week. We're just going to be diving into it, news and rumors, a couple of interesting topics, and then we'll go from there. First, though, before I get started, listen, nothing would make me happier than to spit in Dan and Matt's face by having this, the most liked, the most shared, the most subscriber increase of any video that we've ever put out. This is episode number 40. Let's make a little spike. Let's create a little spike in the data here for me. So please like it below, comment below. We want to engage your comments. We want to hear what you have to say. Let us know so that we can get this out there. And of course, we can make Matt and Dan look like the chumps that they actually are. All right, without further ado, let's get into it. So, news and rumors this week. Dark Side of the Ring has been renewed for a 5th season, which is wonderful to hear. Dark Side of the Ring has done some very interesting things, although I have to say that I'm a little worried that they're running out of good things to talk about. There's no shortage of controversy in the world of professional wrestling, certainly when you look historically. But we've picked a lot of the low-hanging fruit. There's not a lot of low-hanging fruit left. So, which is good news for guys like me, good news for guys like Dan, because now you're getting into the really kind of you're kind of scraping the bottom of the barrel. You're getting to the stuff that we know about, that we're interested in, that maybe, the mass media doesn't know so much about. Like, people know about steroids in professional wrestling. People know about the plane ride from hell, or at least have heard of it. Lots of people maybe on the edge of the industry know about the mass transit incident and stuff like that. A lot of, the death of Owen Hart. These are things that are really, have sort of broken through the professional wrestling membrane and have made their way into the pop culture. But there's lots of really fascinating, interesting things that haven't done that. So kind of the deeper we go into seasons, the more nuanced the conversation is going to get and the more interesting it's going to be. So, viewership hasn't really been spectacular, especially in the last couple of seasons, if things have sort of gotten more nuanced. But I suspect that it's going to be very interesting, certainly for the hosts of this show, Wrestling with the Business, and with anybody that's certainly on the inside of the business and is particularly interested in that kind of a thing. Things are going to start getting very interested. So I'm excited for that. This isn't news. I can't believe that we're even having to cover this. I don't know why this is news. Maybe this is a testament to how slow things are going right now. I don't know. But apparently it has officially been, I guess, confirmed that on the Jericho cruise just before COVID in January of 2020, there was an altercation between Chris Jericho and MVP of, obviously, WWE fame. And that MVP actually ended up knocking out Jericho on his own cruise, which is very interesting. Sean Ross Sapp of Fightful said that he kind of heard that or confirmed it like a year ago, but didn't really say anything about it. So, again, to me, this is kind of like a no news story. Like, maybe it's indicative of how slow things are. But it happened. It's reported. It's now, 4-year-old news now, so kind of who gives a crap, but it's happening. In more pertinent and interesting news, Dirty Dango has re-signed another 1-year contract with TNA. Dirty Dango was on our list of free agents that we talked about on the previous show, the first year of 2024. I think we all kind of agreed, like, he really isn't going to make an impact anywhere else. TNA's where he needs to stay. He's, I believe, 40 now, so he's kind of maybe on the downswing. Very talented, very good, very interesting, very entertaining. But he's just not. He's not going to get the push that he deserves in a place like WWE or AEW. So maybe TNA is just the best that he can do. So it's a good fit for him, and I look forward to seeing what he's going to be a part of. Obviously, a lot of really interesting stuff happening with TNA now. So it's good to hear that he's going to be a part of that. So TNA has unveiled the all-new championship belts. I will snap a couple of shots of these so that Steve can include them right here. What do I think of them? I love them. I liked the Impact X Division belt. I'm trying to remember if that was on my list of top 5 belts when Matt and I did it on Falls Count Anywhere. I don't think it was on my list, but it definitely made my honorable mentions. These new belts are cool. It's a more classic style. The World Championship belt kind of makes me think of the big gold belt, the BGB of World Fame. It looks great. It looks regal. You know, the Impact belts, they looked cool, but they looked kind of edgy. There wasn't really much of a classical look to them. And that kind of, I think it kind of takes away from the prestige of the championship when you're in a position where it doesn't kind of look like your stereotypical image of what a belt should look like, if that makes any sense. It's not enough to be good. You got to look good too. These new belts, I think, have a much more classic look to them. I think they look great. Definitely an improvement. I wonder what's going to happen to the old Impact belts. Like, is Scott D'Amore going to keep them in his office, or are they going to get donated to the Professional Wrestling Hall of Fame or something like that? One of the halls of fame or something? Go into collection. I'd be interested to see how much they sell for. Not that I could ever afford one. Let's talk about WWE. So, Patrick Clark Jr., known as the Velveteen Dream, obviously had an incredible run in NXT, 4 years ago, up until about 3-4 years ago. He has been making the rounds in the last week or two. He is desperate to get back into professional wrestling, specifically WWE, and he has been cutting out all the stops. He posted a video last week basically issuing a public apology. For those of you that don't know, right around the time COVID kind of was hitting its peak, 2021 timeframe, I want to say late 2020, early 2021, there was some allegations that came out about some inappropriate messages that he was sending to like underage boys and underage girls, and there was some Reddit leaks of and like maybe like nude photographs and that kind of stuff that perhaps he'd sent to perhaps some underage people. WWE claims that they did an internal investigation of this, and they really didn't find anything of it, which seems kind of strange to me because I don't know if they fired him or they let his contract lapse and they just didn't renew it. But for whatever reason, his heart or his shoes, he was basically shunned pretty credibly. And then there was some issues with the law outside. I think he was like arrested for assault, and there was some drug possession issues. Basically, kind of he got the stink on him is really the only way. Like, the allegations were credible enough to sort of create this, that he was condemned in the court of public opinion, I guess what you would say, even though, you know, WWE did their own internal investigation, and a lot of the assault charges specifically, I think, were dropped as well. So it's kind of like he just kind of get the stink on him, and nobody wants anything to do with him. And so he posted this public apology a week or two ago, that went viral on Twitter, obviously, and now he's like calling Booker T. Like, Booker T came out in his podcast earlier this week and said that Dream had called him and had, you know, talked about how he wanted to get back in the business. This was maybe 2-3 months ago, and he didn't know how to do it. And Booker T was basically like, "Hey, I love your gimmick. Let's do it." You know, he kind of was sort of passively supportive. So Dream's kind of trying to edge his way in we'll have to see what happens. I mean, the gimmick was great. He was a great wrestler. Both myself and Matt had the privilege of seeing him wrestle on at least one, I think 2 occasions. He got over amazingly well. He had great matches. I mean, he's just a good performer. If he can kind of get out of his own way, he kind of makes me think of some of these Hollywood actors that maybe break out a little too young and kind of can't handle it. And now they're kind of, I don't know, you grow, you mature, and maybe you try and better yourself. I don't know. If any of that underage stuff is true, he definitely shouldn't be out there. But if it isn't true, then I don't know. Maybe he deserves another chance. He's definitely a moneymaker, at least in NXT. Can't really argue with that. So we'll see what happens there. WWE has announced a replacement for Kevin Dunn has been hired. A new head of media and production, a gentleman by the name of Lee Fitting, has joined WWE. And this is interesting. I'm going to try and shoehorn this into one of the overarching meta conversations we've been having for, I don't know, maybe half a year, 6 months on this show. Dan was always a pretty strident supporter that Disney was going to be one of the major WWE. I don't know if he's changed his position now that two-thirds of the shows have been accounted for, but Dan has always kind of firmly supported the idea that Disney might try and get in on it. And this Lee Fitting guy is from ESPN. His background's primarily with ESPN, so he's got experience with Monday Night Football. He's got experience with the college football playoffs, and he's done work on several other Disney-related projects. So, hiring a guy in with extensive Disney experience, obviously, just his previous experience seems to justify, the position as head of media and production. But it is also interesting, an interesting coincidence, if it is a coincidence, that he happens to have a background with Disney. I don't know. We'll see. Chris Van Vliet got an interview with LA Knight that struck me as very interesting this week, specifically in regards to pay. So, Knight said that he actually took a pay cut to stay with WWE, which just struck me as crazy. Obviously, the devil's in the details. You have to question the circumstances behind it. Was this the only deal that LA Knight got? Was it take a 10 or a 20% pay cut, or, go pound salt? Was this, he's got multiple offers on the table? Maybe New Japan, maybe TNA, maybe AEW, maybe WWE, and he chose to sacrifice a better deal somewhere else so that he could stay with WWE. Is this a circumstance like that, except maybe WWE still offered them a better deal than the other companies were getting, so he's still taking the best? The context is so important in a situation like this, so it's really tough to tell. But I do think it's interesting that a guy like LA Knight, whose stock has only risen over the course of the last 3-4 years, his stock is as high as it's ever been right now. And he's still in a position where he's taking pay cuts. I don't know. It strikes me as very interesting. I wonder if Triple H didn't kind of sit him down and hey man, we just need more time. We're going to make something of you. The money's going to come, blah, blah, blah. I think LA Knight's what? He's around 40? Late 30s? 40? Something like that. So, obviously he definitely gets older or whatever. But you could easily make the argument that he's entering the downslope of his career. So, maybe he just values what they gave him. But it was interesting because it seems like wages in general are rising for everybody, and it seems like he might be an exception to that rule, right? The AEW, TNA rebranding itself, taking off, more financial success. They say all ships rise with the tide. It seems like a ship that's becoming a submarine, if wages are any indication. So that's interesting. I also wanted to make one last comment on in the WWE universe. Guys, if you are not following the R-Truth Judgment Day storyline, it is the best thing going in professional wrestling right now. It is absolutely hysterical. R-Truth is a craftsman. You can tell he's been in the business, the entirety of his life. I think he's been in the business almost as long as some of these guys have been alive. And the work that they're doing with him. This past Monday night, I was at the gym. I was running on the treadmill, and I was watching Raw, but I was literally just watching it on mute because I don't like trying to read the words while I'm running. It makes me nauseous and all that stuff. So I'm literally just watching what's happening, which sucks during promos, but during wrestling matches, it's nice. And the latest promo from Monday night came on that had him. It was like he was like, him being born, and they showed this little baby sitting with a doctor, and like it was just very clear that it was just like thrown together like hobnob. They had like the Judgment Day babies and then R-Truth there with him on a microphone. Like it was just hysterical. They had like all these Judgment Day photographs, and then you could tell like R-Truth was just like poorly photoshopped in this. It'll be the best 2 minutes of your day if you watch it. It's absolutely hysterical. And then all the antics and the I won't say lowbrow, but I'll say lighthearted humor that's associated with all like the misconceptions between like, what's going on with like, confusion in matches. Is R-Truth helping? Is he not helping? They don't want him on the team, but he wants to be on the team, and he's like kind of slowly bringing them around to convince them to be on the team. And now they're actually selling shirts with like your standard Judgment Day shirt, and then like in duct tape at the bottom it says "and R-Truth." It's really good stuff. It's really good stuff. It's an entirely different vein from like the Bloodline stuff, and even the MJF and the Adam Cole stuff. This is like, it's like lighthearted, funny humor. And yeah, I know, everybody goes through their heel turns and stuff. R-Truth is not a good heel. He is a much, 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 much better face, and this is just going over very well, if you ask me. It's very funny. So check that out if you haven't. It's definitely worth your time. All right, moving on to AEW. So, obviously, there's been a mass exodus behind the scenes from AEW. And apparently AEW has scooped up the former WWE Regional Director of Live Events, Kosha Irby. I hope I'm saying that right. Sorry if I'm not. Kosha Irby. Conceivably, maybe, to replace Dana Massey. I don't know. Obviously, Dana left because she wasn't thrilled with how the Jacksons were treated over the whole CM Punk rigmarole. She kind of just let her contract lapse. And I believe she did marketing and merchandising. Obviously, Irby's background with the director of live events maybe lines up kind of well with that. But at the same time, people aren't really ruling out the possibility that the position could be as high as like chief operating officer or something like that. I'm not sure how director of live events for WWE translates into a COO role, depending on the diversity of Irby's experience, but very interesting. So we're finally seeing some backfilling, at least of important positions and roles in AEW. I think, when the great exodus started happening, a month or so ago, right around the end of the year, when the great exodus started happening, and people started leaving, like QT Marshall, and when Dana Massey left, and when people just slowly started to kind of allow their contracts to lapse, or AEW allowed people's contracts to lapse, you're kind of like, okay, this could be a bad sign here. Like, when people start leaving and they aren't replaced, that's like a very bad sign. You start wondering about the financial health and things. And of course, obviously the stands are filling up better now than they were 6 months ago, but they're still not great. They're still not where you want them to be. So you kind of wondered, but the fact that they're hiring in somebody with some, wrestling experience, that's a really good sign. So one can only hope this is a sign of better things to come. And if it is a type of director of live events position, similar to kind of that role, it'll be interesting to see if we don't see a live events, a tick up, hopefully, in live event attendance, because live events, WWE has just been doing outstanding with their live event attendance as well. Backstage at Dynamite Homecoming this week, the Bastard, Pac, was reportedly there. We haven't seen Pac since, I don't even know, the summertime, I think. Maybe July. I think it was before I went on vacation. It was before the Professor's solo episode. So we'll have to see what happens. It would be great to see Pac back. Uh, Rhyme intended. It would be great to see Pac back there performing. He's obviously electric. His stuff is amazing, and with some of the new talent that they've added, some of the new storylines that they've got going, could be very interesting to see a healthy Pac back. So we'd love to see that. No real update on when and if Mercedes Moné is going to be joining AEW, or at least debuting with AEW. Eric Bischoff made some waves. I think it was on his Strictly Business show this past week. He's basically saying, yeah, Mercedes Moné is not going to move the needle at all. Basically because nobody can move the needle but CM Punk. You know, it would be hard for a woman to move the needle. But that being said, as attendance figures fall, as viewership falls, you do kind of get to a point where I think like it becomes easier for the needle to move. Like the worse things get, the easier it is to have a positive impact. So that's not a very strong argument in support of AEW, I know, but you know, I wouldn't be discounting it. She's the biggest superstar going in the business right now. I mean, I don't know who's bigger than her. She's definitely, I think, the biggest superstar internationally in the wrestling business. So, you know, if she doesn't have an impact at all, even with like merchandise sales or something, I think you need to seriously look at your business model and look at what you're doing, because you're doing something very wrong. Or you need to consider that the industry is entirely different. That like you're in the wrestling business and the wrestling business is dead, and it's all about sports entertainment now. One other thing I wanted to cover, actually, WWE related. It's not in my notes, but if I was with the group of guys, if I was with the other two guys, I'd probably be I'd be doing a little rooster walk right now. They have announced that WWE Backlash in 2024 is going to be in France. So, you know, I had predicted, basically going all the way back to the beginning of the show, I had said, like, guys, Americans are not the audience anymore. We are 5% of the world population. Wrestling is a global phenomenon, and companies like WWE that are strategically placed to take advantage of that are going to start taking advantage of it. You know, you see something like The Rock's return getting 171 million views. I would love to see, that's my Trump, I would love to see how many of those views are domestic versus international views. Because I'd be willing to admit that like over 120 million of them are all international. And they've added greatly. Obviously, they're doing Elimination Chamber in Perth in February. They did a whole tour of Mexico. They did a whole tour of France last year. They did a whole tour of England. They obviously they do at least one, sometimes two shows, PLEs in England each year. Obviously, they do Crown Jewel or Night of Champions over in Saudi Arabia. I mean, they are really spreading themselves out and really expanding and becoming international. So that'll be, I think, the beginning of May is when that's scheduled for. So once again, the international sprawl is continuing, and the varsity athlete is right. What else can I say? All right, the last thing I want to get to, back to AEW. So Tony Khan has been making some waves online about Jinder Mahal getting a title shot on WWE Raw. And it really isn't that bad. I mean, I don't know why there's that much controversy to it. You know, I think that strategically Khan is probably making a mistake. Lots of people don't realize yet that WWE and AEW like aren't in the same business. We group them together because they look the same. But as time passes on, and the product the products are kind of drifting away from each other as time passes. I mean, we're in what, the 5th anniversary of AEW. It's been basically 5 years now. And the longer that the companies coexist, the more they kind of differentiate and they kind of drift away from each other. And it kind of creates this weird situation where, how far apart do you drift before you're not really the same product anymore? You know? And I don't really know where that line is, but at some point you're not playing baseball anymore, you're playing cricket. Yeah, there's a pitcher. Yeah, he's throwing a ball. Yeah, you have a bat. Yeah, you're hitting it and you're fielding and you're scoring runs and all that stuff. But the two games look almost nothing like each other. That's obviously, I'm exaggerating. I don't think that they're that different at this point. But the fact that Khan is trying to call out WWE for giving Jinder Mahal a title shot, even though he hasn't won a match in like a year or more, is like, it's like that's not what WWE's business model is. WWE hasn't built its business model of the last 20 years on win-loss records dictating whether someone gets a title shot or not. That isn't how it's worked. That isn't how it's worked, like, even longer than 20 years, probably. It really hasn't been since the days of WCW, when it was like, oh, Goldberg's 163-0, that people ever really even paid attention to that. Except for maybe this like vague notion of like, oh, this person is a jobber now, or this person seems to have won most of their matches or whatever. And even AEW has kind of fallen off that bandwagon a little bit. I mean, they still kind of keep records and they still kind of keep some statistics, when people come out, but it's not like other sports where it's like, oh, you have the winningest record, so, you've won your conference, or, you're going to the playoffs or whatever. Like, it's not that cut and dry. And so while I think WWE is like this, it's giving Jinder Mahal a title shot like that out of the gate is like pretty blatant. Like, it's pretty blatant, like, non-kayfabe. Like, Tony Khan Tony Khan posting on Twitter, like, trying to call that out is kind of like standing up in the middle of the movie theater while Jurassic Park is playing and screaming, like, that's not a real dinosaur. It's like, yeah, we all know it's not a real dinosaur, but it's the specter of it. It's the spectacle of it. That is what's entertaining about it. And obviously the performers performing as if it's an actual dinosaur, right? Like, Seth Rollins isn't coming out and laughing. He's pretending like Jinder Mahal is actually going to put on a good match with him at the Royal Rumble. So, you kind of become the a-hole in that situation. You kind of become like, yes, you're speaking the truth, but you're being an a-hole. You're pulling me out of my belief in the story. You're forcing me to stop willfully suspending my disbelief in the story, and that makes you an asshole. When they do it, we blame them, right? When WWE does something so obnoxious or ridiculous that it pulls us out of kayfabe, we'll call them out on it. And it kind of seems like Tony Khan's kind of being like, again, the guy at the party, screaming at the magician, oh no, it's up his sleeve, or, there's a false bottom in the hat, or whatever. It's like, well, yeah, you're telling the truth, but, you're also being an asshole about it, and you're ruining the show for everybody else. So, yeah, I think Tony Khan probably is a busy enough man that he has more important things to talk about. I commend what he's doing. Like, he's trying to point out, like, this is how our product can be differentiated from WWE. We believe in wrestling. We believe in records, at least somewhat. We believe in maintaining some kind of kayfabe. We believe, like, all that kind of stuff. He's trying to distinguish himself, but I think there are definitely more productive ways that he could be doing it than the way that he's currently doing it. And staying off Twitter, probably not the worst idea in the world for a guy like him. Kind of trying to create these comparisons between himself and Elon Musk, maybe not the best thing to do at this point. Speaking of which, that transitions me very well to our closing. So, thank you very much for watching. If you made it this far, please like, comment, share, and subscribe. There's going to be no Falls Count anywhere this week. Matt's under the weather, so we're going to give him a break, let him heal up, and be back with us next week. So you don't need to check that out. Same thing. Obviously, we're not going to be filming a Ring the Bell this week, but we will have those out for the new year. We do have a lot. You're just going to have to trust me, guys. I know it's been a slow start to the year so far. You're just going to have to trust me. We've got plenty of things in the works, plans, more content, interesting things, 1,000 ideas shifting around right now. The sky's the limit. It's the beginning of a new year. If you've been with us for 40 episodes, thank you so much for being here. If you're brand new, please follow us. We're trying to give a reasonable perspective to professional wrestling. None of the crazy hyperbole. Nothing drives me more nuts than when the people commenting on professional wrestling are as boisterous and absurd and ridiculous as the people on the screen. That's the last thing I want to do. We want to give you a real perspective of what we really think. And sometimes, they can be pretty hostile, but at least you know that it's genuine all the time. And, we want to keep the kayfabe up on the screen. We want to keep it real. We want to make sure it's a shoot here. So in the meantime, stay tuned for next week. You keep watching, and we'll keep wrestling with the business.